Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder on this lovely April morning. Hello, my name is Diana Maiden, and I'm very pleased to be your worship leader for today's service. We welcome all at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. All of you are welcome, and all of you are sacred. Whatever your past was like, whatever this present moment is like for you, we invite you to journey with us together. And welcome also to everyone joining via the magic of the internet. We are delighted that you are here. This congregation is all of us together, in person and online. If you are a new visitor, you'll find a link in our visitor form in the video description, or send us an email to the office to let us know how you found us. I have one special announcement today, and that is to remind you that this afternoon at 4 o'clock here at UUCB, we will be participating in a celebration of installation for our permanent minister, Reverend David Schwartz. We hope you've RSVP'd, but even if you haven't, please come. The installation service is at 4, and we'll have a reception following.
On this Sunday, when we look back at the trail we've traveled and look ahead to the future, it is a deep joy to welcome a kind friend and skilled colleague back to this congregation. For those who don't know her, the Reverend Kelly Dignana served this congregation as your lead minister from 2015 to 2019. In those before times, which despite being 2.5 years were several decades ago, you knew her and you know her as a dynamic presence and a force for justice and a pastor who led and leads with her heart.
Wow. It is so good to be with you all today. I have been caring about you and loving you from afar. And let's just say, how about this guy? Huh? Woo! You did it, and everyone is blessed to have him. David and I have known each other since we were first-year ministers together, and when I saw that it was him, I was just so excited. So a little later in the service, I'll share a bit about what I've been up to, but mostly about how you've continued to inspire me and help me grow. But before we do that, let's begin our service with a call to worship by Reverend Victoria Safford, who will join us later today. A wonderful, wonderful minister, and this reading is called A Map of the Journey in Progress, right? And it could be a map of the journey for any one of us individually or for the shared community.
Here is where I found my voice and chose to be brave. Here's a place where I forgave someone against my better judgment. And I survived that, and unexpectedly, amazingly, I became wiser.
And here along the journey was once when I was forgiven. I'm ready for once in my life to receive that forgiveness and to be transformed. And I survived that also, and I lived to tell the tale.
This is the place where I said no, more loudly than I'd ever thought I could. And everybody stared, but I said no loudly anyway, because I knew it must be said. And those staring settled down into harmless, ineffective grumbling. And over me, they had no power anymore.
And here's a time and another time when I laid down my fear and walked right into it, right up to my neck into that roiling water.
Here on the journey is where my heart learned from cruelty. And here's where I was first astonished by gratuitous compassion and knew it for the miracle it was, the requirement it is. That was a trembling time.
And here, much later in the journey, is when I returned the blessing, clumsily. It wasn't hard, but I was unaccustomed. It cycled around, and the best I could, I sent it back on out, passed the gift along. And this circular motion, around and around, has no apparent end.
Here's a place, a murky puddle, where I've stumbled more than once and fallen. I don't know yet what to learn there. And on this sight I was outraged, and the rage sustains me still. It clarifies my seeing. And here's where something caught me. A warm breeze in late winter, birdsong in late summer.
And here on the journey is where I was told that something was wrong with my eyes, that I see the world strangely. And here's what I said when I said, yeah, I know. I know, I walk in beauty. That's what I do. And here is where I began to look with my own eyes and listen with my own ears and sing my own song, shaky, shaky as it is.
And here is where, if by surgeon's knife, my heart was opened up, and here, and here, and here, and here, these are the landmarks of conversion. Friends, will you rise in body or in spirit and sing together?
From the light of the days remembered, burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the faith that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion seek to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the faith that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the faith that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Y'all sound good. It's good to sing together. Last week on spring break, the kids and I headed west. The furthest west we'd been so far in Colorado was Nederland, which is like a half hour up the road. But we went west and south over the mountains to the great sand dunes. Yet, if you haven't been there, the sound you just heard is the best recommendation I can give. It is incredible. We went up from the lowlands, here merely at 5,000 feet, and we went up and drove past and through Grantry and Jefferson and Fairplay, took a photo at Hoosier Pass and hastily got back in the car again. And up on those hillsides as we passed, everywhere we went were stands of aspen. No leaves yet, but you can see them out there. You can see the trunks out there, great big stands. And what I know likely is that every one of those big stands of aspen grew back after fire. They colonize quick, they're pioneer trees, and they spread. They want nothing less than full sunlight. They're a keystone species for a whole ecosystem. They make a community. They make a habitat with rabbit and moose and elk and birds. We saw a bobcat, actually, which I never expected to see. These aspen, they grow 150 years. They grow 20 or 80 feet tall. They're incredible trees. They have chloroplasts in the bark. So even when they have no leaves, they're still photosynthesizing at a really slow level, which is also part of why animals like to eat their bark so much. I haven't tried it yet. But aspens, they have seeds, they reproduce that way, but mostly what they do is they send out runner roots far and wide. They send out these runners, and then those runners send up new trees. So when you look at a grove, what seems to be a whole bunch of individuals is really one community, each of them growing in different ways, doing their own life, but rooted together. Healthy stands have trees of all sizes, little ones and big. And healthy stands come back quick after fire. Their energy, their life, their growing is in their roots. And so when fire burns across, they send up their run. They're called suckers. They send up 50 or 100,000 suckers in a single acre to grow the forest back together again. That's how we do it, too, in this community. Not that you all are a bunch of suckers. Should have thought that through. But that's how we do. Our life and our connection is in our roots. We tend to that. We tend to the interconnection between each and all of us. We come here to remember that none of us are really alone, none of us really separate from each other. So that when the difficult times come, when the fires come through in our own lives, and the literal fires too, we send shoots back up again and reach back towards the sun.
If you are joining us online and have a candle or a chalice near your computer, please get ready to light it. We invite you to also to type into the chat box where your chalice is lit, the street or the neighborhood, or what city if you're joining us from outside of Boulder County. I'd like to invite this morning Bob Evans to light this morning's chalice.
Good morning. What a long, wonderful trip it's been. And it's another morning and another warm, wonderful day on our journey. I'm giving a little retrospective of our church history. While the history of Unitarians and Universalists in Boulder County starts in the 1880s, will be centered on the UUCB part. So come on board. Our UUCB train leaves the station, figuratively, about 60 years ago with our merry band, then the Unitarian Fellowship of Boulder, holding services in Dottie's dance studio at 13th and Spruce, and sharing space with the Quakers. Think of the church building as passenger cars that we are constructing on our journey through life's adventures. Our conductor at this time is Reverend Thomas J. Maloney, and our journey takes us to 5001 Pennsylvania on the remote farmland east of Boulder proper. The hat was passed, and funds were raised, and 3 acres were purchased in 1960. The building of the earth and hearth room was completed in 1993 with our merry band, now the Unitarian Church of Boulder, doing the interior and finishing as a potluck project. The first service was held on 24th December, 1963, with our merry band sitting in folding chairs, and it was a real candlelight service. There was no electrical connection to the building yet. The Elsa Deutsches copper doors that are now internal to the building were the entryway. Our Steinway grand piano, built in 1887 in Chicago, was purchased in Colorado Springs and later installed in the earth room. In 1964, with conductor Reverend Pennington on board, the R.E. wing was expanded, again with the work of our merry band. The neighborhood was slowly starting to convert from farmland to houses, but we were sharing some space with cows. The full construction was not completed until 1970 by the work of our merry band, including Fred Cole. And there's the next slide that is not shown up yet. Ta-da. There was also a change of conductors, with Reverend Forrest Whitman in a cab. In the mid-1970s, yours truly joined this merry band, as did many young families. We had become the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. And another slide. Our merry band expanded, and our passenger car became crowded. So in 1980, we decided to make another expansion and built the Sky Room and other offices. Many hands, including those of many of you who are here today, constructed stone walls from stones from Alf Koenig's mountain property under the watchful eye of Wes Sears. As before, the construction took some time to complete. This stained glass behind me was dedicated in 1981. The neighborhood is becoming decidedly suburban. Janet and I were married in 1989 in this room. The Steinway upright piano in the Sky Room arrived in 1992. The Reverend Kurt Kubald became our conductor on the ride in 1995. Reverend Jacqueline A. Ziegler became our conductor in 2000. Our beautiful stained glass tree of life dates from this time. Reverend Howard K. Lind was in the cab in 2008, as was Reverend Kelly in 2015. And this weekend, the ticket puncher is handed to Reverend David Schwartz. And as we continue on this journey, I light this candle, this chalice, in honor of all past, present, and future travelers on this wonderful journey. All aboard!
We now invite all of those gathered in your various locations to join together in fellowship and community as we all say aloud together our congregation's covenant. We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it.
I'd like to invite you into a time of meditation. And you can do whatever you'd like with your eyes. You can close them or lower your gaze or keep them open. And drop your attention, just begin. We're going to do some centering here. Drop your attention to about an inch below your belly button. This is your center of gravity. Feel that center place in your body. And now imagine that there's a circle all around you. We're going to center inside this circle. So let's begin by centering in length. Settle your weight down into your feet and let your spine lengthen and feel yourself growing taller in this circle. Even the circle gets taller, up and down. You are centered in your own dignity, your inherent worth and dignity. And when we embody our inherent worth, we can see it in ourselves and others. Feel yourself taller. The second dimension is width. So imagine or feel yourself growing wider in your circle from left to right. Even the circle gets wider. Fill out your full width in your shoulders, your hips, widen out. We so often curl in. So feel yourself widening out. You are centered in your connection to community and all that is. The third dimension is depth. Feel yourself in the center of the circle with plenty of room in front of you and plenty of room behind you. Feel the circle even getting deeper, rounding out. The depth behind us is connected to our history, our skills, who and what has our back. Feel there's a lot of room back there, lots of room. Watch the circle growing behind you. Now focus on your front, your heartbeat, your belly. Feel the connection to the future in front of you and what you care about. Watch the circle grow in front of you. Feel the whole circle now. It's taller, wider, deeper. You are taller, wider, deeper. You are embodied in your dignity, your connection, and in the center present moment of time. From this centered place, the fourth dimension is focused on a commitment. a commitment that truly matters to you, something that brings you fire. So bring to mind a commitment you have. Maybe it's to your family, to yourself, to the world, to this church community. Feel the big circle around you once again. And gently notice your feet. Wiggle your toes if you're able. Feel your hands. And when you're ready, open your eyes or lift your gaze.
Ritual is outward expression of inward experience. We invest ritual with meaning that wells up from within and beyond us, but it moves in both directions. Ritual changes and transforms us in the process. The table in front of me has a tray and 2 bowls, a tray filled with ordinary, extraordinary dirt, earth formed from 1,000 generations of cottonwood and aspen leaves, watered by snowmelt and thunderstorms, burned by fire, mulched by prairie dogs. This is the land of the Ute and Arapaho people, sacred earth. And the bowls contain stones from Boulder Creek, little pieces of mountain with their rough edges smoothed by time and water and motion. We set aside time in our service each week to take a stone and place it into the earth to symbolize the way that our joys and cares, our hopes and our sorrows and our fears take their place in a larger whole, mingling with each other, held in the hand of the earth, held in the hand of something larger than any of us. So in just a moment, as the music begins, I invite you gathered in person to come forward, to take a stone, to feel the weight of it in your hand, the weight of your hopes and worries, to put a little bit of your body's heat into it and then place it among the others. And for those online, I invite you to share in the chat as you feel moved. For all these blessings and concerns, for everything that we carry silently, thank you for the ways that you bless each other.
cross over into campground.
Amen.
Well, aspen trees are such a great metaphor that you have fully embraced. And thank you, David, for teaching us even more. I did not know about the photosynthesis going on in the tree trunks. So that's amazing, and I'm not sure you should be eating it. So watch yourself out there in the wild, man. Each tree appears independent, and that's true for us Unitarian Universalists, right? Because each of us might have our own meaning-making system right here in the same room. Lots of different meaning-making systems and theologies, but underneath, we're all connected. We're all connected. And when we realize this, we realize that anything we do affects everything else, and vice versa. And that urges us to keep growing and changing and transforming so that the forest, the grove, does not get stagnant or die off. When the root system's strong, it reproduces, as David said, and spreads out little suckers. Or rhizomes, like through the sprouts through the rhizomes. And new little sprouts pop up outside the grove. And this is the thing, is that you all are a strong grove. You are a strong grove. You're committed to changing and growing and transforming, and anyone who enters these doors is transformed. I was transformed by you in lots of ways, but especially by your spiritual depth, your commitment to Unitarian Universalist identity, your love, and your ability to do hard things. As many of you know, that has been popping up in my life, and I'm out there, sprouting up. And so mainly today, I just came to say thank you. I thought we might burst into song, but Deborah advised against it. I am saying thank you. Thank you. Thank you is my practice. That's right. As most of you know, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer at the same time I was leaving here in my role as your lead minister. And it was a hard thing. It was just weird, the timing of it all. It was as if life or spirit called me on to be with her on that journey toward death. And the path was filled with twists and turns and lots of tears and tons of laughter. And I don't know if your ears were burning, but my mom and I talked about you all a lot. She loved to come to Boulder to see you. And I told her about the book study that many of you did on being mortal. Remember that book? And then I told her about the way we used it in worship as an example of how to do hard things. And for those of you who haven't read it, it's really a meditation on how people can better live when they're facing age-related frailty, serious illness, and death. The author, Atul Gawande, calls for a change in the way the medical system treats patients approaching their end. Well, anyway, Mom had read it. So she pulled out her copy that was all highlighted and dog-eared and starred. And then she asked the whole family to read the book, even the grandkids. The youngest was 11 at the time. And then she invited us to join in a family book club, which she promised would be fun, complete with our favorite comfort foods. And everyone looked at the title of the book and said, yeah, right. But we got together, and we shared our concerns and our feelings, and I think it was then, and it was in July of 2019, it was then that everyone came out of denial about what was truly happening with her diagnosis. And then that night, she laid it all out. She laid it out on how she wanted it to go, and she made us all pinky swear and promise that we would follow her wishes all the way through. Mom and I also talked about the importance of spiritual depth and a good, solid theology to help us make meaning when things get hard. She gathered up some of her friends in Denver, and we worked through the class, Building Your Own Theology in Community, which, if I remember correctly, over 70 of you have done. She wrote out her theology in her own handwriting, and it has been a gift to the whole family as we process life without her. And it's been a gift to each of us as we've really considered how our own theologies can change and how they're so supportive. And of course, it helped her remember her beliefs about why bad things happen and what supported her at the time. It helped her reconsider her beliefs about the afterlife and God and all the things. And then she wrote her own memorial service, including a letter to death. So all of this set us up to really enjoy her life and then let her go when it was time. When we face hard things, we can do them. And when we have spiritual depth, we can actually know that those hard things become easier. And if we have spiritual depth, we aren't defined by those hard things. Just think about all the hard things you've done as a congregation since the beginning of your inception and definitely over the past several years. I have been thinking about you, fires and King Supers and COVID and all of it. I have been loving you from afar and also knowing you are a strong grove with deep roots. So I am saying thank you for inspiring me and helping me grow and teaching me and helping me really learn more deeply about spiritual depth and theologies and facing hard things. I've been reading Father Greg Boyle's books. He started Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles, one of the largest gang intervention, rehabilitation, and reentry program in the world. And his books are hilarious and offer hundreds of stories about people who are doing hard things and how they're transformed in the process. He said this: spiritual depth is not about shaping up. It's about waking up to our connection to all that is. Spiritual depth is about paying attention to the aspen roots and the trees. It's about living fully into our circles, like we did during the meditation. And this kind of spiritual depth is core to Unitarian Universalist identity. Our Unitarian ancestors in Europe, at least, you're right, Bob Evans, that in the U.S. it's later, but clear back in the 1500s, our UU ancestors said that spiritual depth wasn't about shaping up and overcoming original sin. It was about waking up to interdependence with all that is. Over the past couple of years, I have interacted with a lot of Unitarian Universalists from across the country, including students at Iliff School of Theology, where I'm teaching UU history. And what I have noticed in all my interactions with preaching online, I mean, that's one of the things of COVID. I got to do a lot of preaching at various places all over the country. But let me just tell you, I'm not trying to compare too heavily, but I will say that this church has an unbelievably deep sense of our faith tradition. You had that before I came, and you understand our history and what makes us a true faith tradition. So in getting ready to teach history at ILEF, I went back through some worship services that we led and classes that you all led, and I'm going to just name a few things. Francis David inspired you to offer tolerance and acceptance without thinking Unitarian Universalism is the only way that can happen. Hosea Ballou reminds you, and you fully embraced, that courageous love can change the world, and salvation is available in this life. Humanism is core to your identity, our identity as you use, and we can layer on top of it. Right? Francis E.W. Harper, the room down the hall, reminds you, and you live, that we are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity. You know these things, and of course you know covenant. You know the promise, the pinky swear to connect and stay connected, a promise to tend to the roots and the trees, a promise to operate out of interdependence, not individuality. Your sense of UU identity is popping up in my life, and especially at ILEF with future ministers. So I am saying thank you. And lastly, I want to remind you about how well you care and love. I don't really need to say much about it because you've all felt it, you've experienced it, and you've offered it to each other. And you offered it to me. And when someone asks me, what was Boulder like? I said, that Boulder church is the love church. The vibe of this church is care and love. And I am saying thank you. You're a strong grove. You've inspired me and transformed me. And you have chosen an amazing minister for the next leg of your journey. Reverend David Schwartz. He is terrific.
I am so grateful to you, Kelly. Thank you. From the very first time that we met last spring and sat down together, the welcome and the care and the clear, deep love that you have for this congregation. A lot of ministers out there are jaded. Not jaded, realistic, but not jaded. And I got that right from the very first moment. It was one of the things that made me say and see that there's something really special here. Thank you. We meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. These are President Kennedy's words beginning his speech, committing this country to the moon landing, and I listened to them. I listened to that speech. I listened to those words 12 months ago with JFK's thick Boston accent, speaking as much to this moment today as it was true 60 years ago. We meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. I listened sitting in a church office in Chicago. I listened as I looked west and in mind's eye traveled across 1,000 miles of prairie to this congregation and the wall of mountains behind us. I listened as I wondered and hoped that this might be a community who does difficult things and seeks spiritual depth, who knew where they came from and where they hoped to go, and who followed into the hills a compass heading that pointed always towards love. I wondered and hoped for a grove where I could put down roots just like you have. It's a risk to put down roots in a new community. If y'all have moved before, if you've moved, you know it's a risk to put down roots. Even if it's little things like planting tomatoes in a window box or bulbs in the ground in the fall, it's a risk to say, I'm staying long enough to see these come up in the spring. I'm staying long enough to eat these tomatoes at the end of the summer. The risk of putting down roots is not just in planting, it's in relationship. You say, yeah, I'll go on that trip to Pine Ridge, and it will change me in ways I don't know, and I'm doing it. You say, yes, I'll serve on that committee. I'll sing in the choir. You say, yes, I'm going to stay after church this Sunday and chat, and I'm going to join a covenant group for a few months to build a relationship rooted in mutual vulnerability. And all of those relationships, all of those roots, they invade your schedule, and they limit your options, and they tie you down, and they open your life. Because the trees that grow tallest, the trees that weather the storms, are the ones whose roots go down deepest and weave into their neighbors. In seminary, Terry and I had a little Norfolk pine. This little pine tree was about 2 feet tall in a pot. We named him Fibonacci for the mathematician. I don't remember why, but he felt like a Fibonacci. Called him Fibs for short. We took Fibs with us from one apartment to another all through grad school, and in the 7 years he lived with us, Fibs grew about 6 inches. He got from this tall to that tall. We were so proud. This is before we had kids. And then I was out one day walking back home from the train, and I saw a huge pine tree with these long, sweeping arms coming down. These fingers of pine, just like Fibonacci had, and I looked closer and closer, and I realized I was looking at a Norfolk pine, planted in the ground, taller than the brownstone it was in front of, a Norfolk pine planted in the right soil, given the right water and light and nutrients and community of trees around it. It grows 200 feet tall. So yeah, it's a risk to put down roots. It's a risk to weave your lives into the people around you. You choose a place, a spot, a path. You let go of other possibilities to make that choice. And then you grow in ways completely unexpected. Any grove, if it lasts long enough, if it stretches far enough, any grove which lasts sees difficult times. And you've seen that too. Last summer, exploring different ways to get from my home in Longmont down here, I went west to Lyons and then south on 36, right along the foothills. Anyone who's not from here, this is such a nice place to live. It is really astonishingly beautiful. And this land that rises and falls. Illinois is the 4th flattest state in the country. So with this wall of mountains at my side, I could look east, across 1,000 miles of prairie, and back into a different chapter of my life. And then I could look west and see the scars of the Left-Hand Canyon fire. Dark soil under dry grass, blackened tree trunks, any grove which lasts sees hard times. This church has lasted. And so this church has seen difficult times. The minister here in the 70s and 80s profoundly betrayed the trust of this congregation. And in 1993, when it became public, he didn't take responsibility. He didn't face accountability. He left. He resigned from the church, from the UU Ministers Association, before either body could take action. He burned through and left this congregation fire-scarred and departed. But I tell this old and ugly story because that's not where it ends. Any grove which lasts sees difficult times and heals. The aspens send their roots down and spread wide exactly so that when the fire comes, they can grow back up again. Exactly so that none of those trees stand alone. And the story of this congregation is not the story of a people wounded a generation ago. It is the story of a grove reborn and renewed. A church whose connection didn't burn away but grew stronger. A community who can wear the scars of the past like badges of honor, even as new life and new growth surrounds us. Covenant, Reverend Kelly reminds us, covenant is the promise to connect, the promise to tend to the roots, not just the trees in the aspen grove, the promise to operate out of interdependence, not individuality. That's what weathers the storms of the world and the fires inside us. You know it in your bones because you have lived it every day since you came here. Last spring, as we first got to know each other, you asked me, what draws you here? And Kelly said it clearer than I can. It's what drew me here and what drew her here. What drew you here? Your commitment to spiritual depth, your willingness to do difficult things, your commitment to a UU identity and your community of care for each other. I still have some of the Tupperware to return from the folks who brought us meals when Terry's hip was replaced last fall. That ordinariness of care, that ordinariness of people just showing up and saying, what can we do to help? How can we reach out? Is so common and so beautiful. It is the ordinary and astonishing work of making a life together. And that's what I came here to do for my own life and with all of you. Last spring, when I first met you, I told you this old Norwegian folk tale, a wisdom story about the path that we've taken, all of us, to arrive in this moment and the path still stretching on. Well, in this story, the hero comes to a fork in the road, and 3 directions lie in front of them, and each is labeled with what's going to happen if they travel down this path, whether it's for you as an individual, whether it's for us as a community. The one to the left is marked, travel down this road, and you will return to this place unharmed, unchanged. And the one to the right is marked, travel down this road, and you may or may not return. You may not again be the person that you are standing here today making this choice. And the third road, the third is marked, travel down this path, and you will never return. And of course, in the fairy tale, as in our congregation, the hero chooses the third path, never to return. How else could we discover where this journey leads us? Unless it leads to a place and a person you have never been and a people we have not yet been. I don't know where this path is taking us all together. But I know with gratitude and curiosity, it's taking us forward with deep appreciation and care for your work in ministry, Kelly. With deep appreciation and care for the shared ministry of this congregation and every one of you who has brought us to this moment of choosing the road ahead, we'll keep on the path and build a new way. Will you rise and body your spirit to sing it together?
We are building a new way. We are building working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, this world will die. Peace and freedom. Let's do one more verse. We are building a new way. Building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. Feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way.
This morning, April's Share Our Plate recipient is EcoCycle. EcoCycle's mission is to innovate, implement, and advocate for local and global zero waste solutions to foster a more regenerative, equitable, and climate resilient future. Rosie is with us today from EcoCycle, and she will tell us more. Welcome, Rosie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosie. I'm from EcoCycle. I had notes, and it felt too impersonal based on how beautiful and special this service is that you've invited me to here today. So I hope it's okay if I go, I can't find Susan, but I hope it's okay if I, if I go off script a little bit. I won't say anything blasphemous, but I'm very grateful to be here today, and on behalf of EcoCycle, we're so grateful that you thought of us and are willing to be so grateful and generous toward us. As I was born and raised in Boulder, and seeing this, the history from earlier in the service was really wonderful to see. EcoCycle was founded in 1976, and it feels like the same timeline. It feels like the same kind of building of our community that we currently are so lucky to live in this beautiful space with these beautiful people. So at the time, EcoCycle, it was the same sort of thing. We have the same sort of photos. It's just community members getting dirty. That's really all it is. Building something that will last, today in 2022. Here we are in this beautiful church. Just down the road, off of Arapahoe, we have our recycling center that, again, the origins of which were volunteers driving around in repurposed school buses, which some of you might remember, or might have even been on. Amazing, yes, perfect. I feel like I was on the buses. I wasn't alive yet, but I think some part of me was there. So I just want to express my gratitude that in this community we can build diverse places in which we can build community and work toward these values that EcoCycle surely shares. As an ecology student, I also am excited to be here with all these people who are wanting to spend their Sunday talking about Aspen Grove ecology and how we can how we can learn from it and how we can see it as part of ourselves. So EcoCycle, as was mentioned, we're a zero-waste organization, and recycling might seem a little bit trivial given the context of the climate crisis. But I'm really connecting with these values over here that EcoCycle, it's not about specifically where does this can end up? Is it in the landfill? How much space is it taking up? It's about our precious resources that we've been given that are finite, and how can we act as stewards both for those resources, for those aspen groves, for that bobcat, and also for each other. How can we build systems which are benefiting everyone, which are respecting the web of existence of which we're all a part. EcoCycle, that's our bottom line, and so you will see our trucks driving around. When our facility opens back up, we would love to have a tour so you can see where all of it's going and how it's all working. But I just wanted to speak that the bottom line is that we're the same. It's the same kind of community. It is the same literal community, and the point is that we're acting as stewards. We're helping everyone else act as stewards for these resources, for these ecosystems, for the creatures that don't have a voice, for people that don't have a voice. One of our most exciting things that happened recently was we passed a landmark bill at the state level called the Plastic Pollution Reduction Act, and it was historical, truly. And so again, it's about plastics, and I could talk about that for hours and hours, and I do all day long. But the basis, I won't, don't worry. But the point is that it's infrastructural, it's systemic, and we're working toward ecological justice, social justice, and fairness, access to resources, and community building. And so I will wrap it up because I will ramble about it. But I am very, very grateful to be here. I'm very grateful for your generosity. On behalf of EcoCycle, we are grateful to have shared and built this community along with you since way back when. And I'll have a table, I'll have actual documents that's not just emotional rambling from me. I would love to chat with you and have resources so you can learn more. But thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed being part of especially such a special service today. And I hope to see you at the table if you're around for coffee. So thank you so much for having me.
Rosie, thank you. That was perfect. You couldn't have said it better. So now I invite you to give as generously as you are able. And you can make a donation now using the link posted in our chat, if you're online, by sending a check to UUCB or scanning the QR code on the next slide and on the wall with your mobile phone. And thank you. may your gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community. Thank you.
The covenant that we make, the promise that we make, is a promise to connect, a promise to tend to the roots, not just the trees in the Aspen Grove, a promise to operate out of interdependence, not just individuality. That promise that we make isn't real when we say it with our words, and it isn't real when we think it in our heads. It's real when we bring it into life in the world. In that spirit, I extinguish our chalice. Thanks to all of you who have gathered this morning. Those online, there's a Zoom room. Stick around for conversation and fellowship, and we'll do the same in the Sky Room. But will you rise in body or in spirit and close in song?
I'd like to quickly just thank Matt Pagliacci for being our guest pianist this morning. Thank you.